Bob Tewksbury is an ex-MLB player, a sports psychologist, and author of 90% Mental. An all-star player turned mental skills coach reveals the hidden game of baseball. Bob won 110 major league games playing for 6 teams: the New York Yankees, the Chicago Cubs, the St. Louis Cardinals, the Texas Rangers, the San Diego Padres, and the Minnesota Twins. He was also a member of the 1992 All-Star team. Bob has worked as the mental performance consultant for the Boston Red Sox, the San Francisco Giants, and the Chicago Cubs. This conversation will include insights and mental strategies that Bob has used in both his playing and coaching career that will help you on your journey to mastery. Welcome, Bob. Excited to have you on. I wanted to start by asking what your early formative years were like. You have a short section in the book that talks about experiencing adversity early in life and battling the belief system that things just don't work out. Could you describe what those early formative years were like, and what do you think helped you remain optimistic that things would work out?
I'm the oldest of 4 kids, and my parents were teenagers when they had us, so they didn't have their education. They lived kind of paycheck to paycheck, and it was challenging for them to provide support. And so we could never really, anything that they really tried to do to get ahead never really worked. So it was kind of like you said, the narrative around the childhood stuff was that things don't work out, and can't have can't have success. This doesn't work. So but I think that I just never really bought into that. I wanted to be a baseball player, and I wanted to go to college, and I did that, and then became a baseball player. But I certainly had my bumps along the way with 2 surgeries and demotions and being traded, and so I think I had to fight some of that narrative throughout my young adulthood and into my professional career. But in the end, the passion and the drive to succeed was able to overcome all those other challenges.
The events you just talked about was part of the second question I had. It was one thing that really stood out to me when I was reading your book was your ability to adapt and persevere. For example, like you just said, when you suffered the arm injury and when you were brought down to AAA and you had to earn your spot back to the big leagues. And the question I had was, with those events in mind, how do you conceptualize or think about loss, adversity, and setbacks?
When I spoke to a group of, I had a program when I retired that I spoke to school age kids about, elementary through to high school, and it was called Have a Dream, Have a Plan, Do the Work. And that, one of the things I mentioned in that is that, whenever we set out to do something, it's never on a linear progression. There's always some bumps and hurdles along the way, and we should expect those as part of our journey. So I think for me, it was part of the path. I tell people that everyone's got a different path, and my path took me through those circumstances. So I have a choice: do I give up, or do I keep working through it to see how it comes out on the other end? And I decided to keep working with it. But all those things, anyone who's had a successful career, or doesn't happen overnight. There's often loss, adversity, challenges. There has to be. Without it, the journey wouldn't be any fun. It would be, you just go out and do it, and you're there. It's whether you appreciate it. That sense of loss and adversity and challenge really gives you perspective to enjoy your successes.
Let's imagine that I'm a high school or college athlete, and I'm sold on the idea that to reach my full potential, I need to train my mind. How would you advise that I get started? What are the most important and fundamental psychological skills that you think I should train?
Well, I have a couple of private clients that are that age, so this is an appropriate question. I think that, the whole area of mental skills is inclusive to uh, confidence, self-talk, concentration, relaxation, goal setting, journaling, breathing. I said the imagery. Um, they all tie in, and I think thoughts become things. So I think what we think about directs everything that we do, and how we perceive our situations directs our thoughts and therefore our actions. So I really think being aware of your thoughts is probably the most important thing, and the ability to change the narrative from something that is negative or not focused on the direction you want to go to something focused on the task, and then everything else I think falls into play after that. Imagery is a tool that you can use to help gain confidence. Journaling is a tool that you can use to change, understand your narrative by writing it down and then look back and change it. Concentration, the ability to focus on the task at hand right now without distraction. So all these things tie in. One thing, Andres, is that these are life skills. It's more than just mental skills for sport. I think all of these things that we talk about can be applicable to anybody in any situation to help us cope with things that are going on with us or around us, like this whole world right now.
Specifically about visualization or visual imagery, I was wondering if you have kind of like a specific framework or specific percentage that you use. For example, when you tell an athlete to visualize, how much of it do you kind of focus on positive visualization, things kind of going according to plan, and then how much of it,
Yeah.
things kind of go awry and how you react to it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I know I've lost sight of, and I think in general you read about that, that you can use imagery for situational rehearsal, and in the event that as a pitcher you gave up a double and you had gave up a run, how would that feel and how would you respond to that? So I would say it's probably 80-20, positive versus the situational rehearsal of how to overcome or adapt to. I do think that I could put more emphasis as a practitioner now. I could probably focus a little bit more on that with clients. You bring up a good point.
So 80-20 is kind of roughly, yeah.
That's what I think. I
Yeah.
think you always want to see yourself succeeding, but in the event that you don't, how are you going to overcome that? And I think, but for me, I usually use that through a discussion, not through an imagery practice. I would tell if somebody had a bad outing or did something, a golfer hit their tee ball into the water, and I wouldn't imagine him. You could error correction. Part of imagery is error correction. So you could have him do it over again, and you could have him visualize hitting it there and how he'd react. I tend to want to talk about that more.
Got it.
What are you thinking when that happens? How do you change that? That would be my first, and then I would probably go to the imagery as a activity for them to practice seeing that.
You talk a lot about in the book about mastering breathing to reach calm, but you don't specifically talk about formal meditation practices. I was wondering if you have thoughts about formal meditation, such as single focus, wide focus, or loving kindness, and if you incorporate any of those formal practices into your mental training consulting.
I don't at the moment. I think my whole the book was in reference to my experiences and what I used to help me through certain situations. So the breath was just a basic, you know, deep breath in, hold, deep breath, or full exhale, and maybe a couple of them. But since my career and since I've been in my second career, I think I've learned a lot about mindfulness and meditation and how that can be valuable of really calming us from in so many ways. I mean, it changes the brain chemistry. We know that there's been research that talks about the benefits. Kind of delays it can delay the reaction time from the stimulus to the response, which helps athletes to, I think, help them overcome situations instead of hitting a tee-ball into the water and throwing your club, which everyone would want to do. You would have a breath and, okay, what do I get to do now? So, and I think loving kindness is, self-compassion is huge when it comes to all of us and athletes, because no one's perfect, and it's really easy to beat yourself up and make yourself feel bad.
Right.
And I think understanding that you didn't try to hit the ball in the water, you didn't try to fail, and that these things happen. How do you overcome them?
For breathing to reach a calm state, is there a specific count of breathing that you prefer, such as maybe 5 seconds in, 2 hold, 7 out, or maybe box breathing? Is there a specific one that you prefer that you teach athletes more often?
Not really. I think that it's more of an individual thing. There's so many different ways to do it. The box breath, the progressive relaxation, if you would, the in through the nose, fill up the lungs, out through the mouth. I think that it's a very individual thing. The athletes need to see what works best for them in competition. There's two. Well, there's actually, you think about this. There's a couple of focuses. There's in performance and then there's pre-performance. You're preparing to play would be one type of breath, and in performance would be another type of breath.
Hmm.
And finding out what works best for you. So a pre-performance could be a progressive relaxation where you're just going through your body and breathing, or it could be a series of box breathing that just kind of helps you calm those pre-competitive nerves. In the game, change happens from the inside out, and our breath is from the inside out. And when we do that in competition, it brings us to the present moment, it relaxes our body, and it gives us a better chance to compete in that next given moment. So whatever the athlete needs to do to make that happen. But generally that type of breath is, long inhale, 6 seconds in, full exhale out through the mouth.
You talked a lot about in the book about about what confidence means to you. I was hoping you could talk a little bit about that. So the question would be, how do you articulate confidence?
It's more than a feeling. We feel confident. We used to think if you feel good, then you play good, and if you feel bad, you're going to play bad. That's what I used to think. So confidence was something that was based on results. But you don't always have to feel good to play good. So confidence becomes a choice that, I am a good player. I understand there's going to be ups and downs. Confidence is always, up and down, up and down. And that's where the routines and the consistent routines, preparation help you feel confident and prepared. And when you feel confident when you feel prepared, you feel more confident. So the definition for me is just the belief that I can successfully overcome the challenge that I'm presented with. That if whatever situation I'm in, can I do it? And that's a belief. That's not a feeling. That's a belief.
If you were to use Albert Bandura's model, so if you were to rank kind of the 4 components that Albert Bandura talks about for developing confidence from most important to least, how would you do it? And for the viewers watching, the 4 components that I'm referring to are: number 1, past performance accomplishments, and that refers to having previous successes. 2, vicarious experiences, which refers to seeing others who are similar to us succeed, and also having a knowledgeable coach that creates situations that helps us succeed. Number 3 would be positive self-talk and verbal persuasion. And 4 would be physiological regulation, which refers to our ability to regulate our thoughts and emotions. So Bob, if you were to rate those 4 from most important to least important for developing confidence, how would you do it?
So I would think, number 1 for me is past successes. Mm-hmm. Number 2 is positive self-talk. I think that there's a definite correlation between our self-talk and our confidence. And, vicarious experiences, that does come into play. Watching other people do it, I think that there's something transferable there. But for me, the first 2 would be past successes and then self-talk.
Is there a 3 and a 4 if you were to rank the last 2?
Probably the regulation, physiological regulation, and then vicarious experiences.
You write about being totally absorbed and in the zone does not happen as often as players would like. How often would you say you reach those states throughout your career? And if you were to assign kind of a rough percentage to it, maybe times reached those states versus divided by games played, rough percentage?
Not many.
Not many, yeah.
No, I think I don't know how many career games I pitched in. I think it was close to 300. And I would say that not even 20, I would say.
Wow.
I think that and I think it's my viewpoint on this is, there is an optimal zone of functioning that, people play at and being in the zone. But I don't think that that's something that you have to begin with. I think it's something that develops throughout the course of the competition. And then you get to that zone. So, how many times did I have it? I'd say, I can't remember that far back, but I had a near perfect game in 1990. And then the start before that, I pitched a shutout. So I would think that that would be a time in which I was probably in the zone. Um, but there was other games where I started out rough and then ended up pitching great. And I
Mm,
know that at some point during that outing, I probably got into the zone, but I didn't start out that way. So
nice.
I think that, and I think this happens, I think this is kind of a separator with professional golfers, is that, you know, some guys come in playing really well and hot, and other guys they find that zone quicker and it lasts a little longer. Some guys don't find it and they struggle to find it. And, that's why it's such a competitive game. Is if you have two bad holes, you can lose the competition. Um, and so I just was thinking of that as an analogy for golfers, because they can birdie the first six holes and feel good, and then all of a sudden lose it,
Right.
and then maybe get it back again. So um, I think it develops more within the competition than something that you have like, okay, I'm in the zone, I'm ready to go.
From the players you've coached, do you kind of see do you see a similar pattern where it's kind of a really low percentage or a really low amount of games where they actually feel like they reach those states?
Yeah, I think a lot of times athletes are really critical of what that state is.
Mm,
And some never find it because they're perfectionists, that they never feel perfect. So um, I don't talk a lot about being in the zone or optimal. I talk more about, thoughts, feelings, behaviors, and how they affect your performance. So I really don't have any examples from players to share with you about that.
yeah. There's a section in the book where you distinguish striving for perfection and not settling for anything other than perfection. Can you expand on what this means and why it could be a helpful perspective for athletes to adopt?
Yeah, because no one's perfect. And I think to strive for that is the quest for excellence. It's to be the best you can be, um, and to feel good about that. I think, perfectionism in itself um, can zap motivation and enjoyment, because you can never reach that pinnacle. Um, and I think that causes a lot of um, athletes to be miserable, because they just can't ever be happy with where they are. So I think, again, there's a difference between striving for it, than there is to try to be perfect. Um, I think that Harvey Dorfman, who wrote the trilogy of books, The Mental Game of Baseball, The ABCs of Pitching, and the uh, Mental Keys to Hitting, was a mentor of mine and one of the pioneers of mental skills in baseball back in the 80s. Um, and he said, you're perfect when you fill the bathtub with 3 inches of water and you step in and your feet don't hit the tub. You know, essentially you can walk on water.
Yeah.
So until you can do that, give yourself a break. you know.
The next question I had was one of the ones I was most excited about. Um, how much of success in baseball can be attributed to being well versed in analytics and game theory? Do you think high school and college players could improve their game by learning the fundamentals of economics, game theory, and sabermetrics?
No,
No.
no. I think that even in Major League Baseball, those numbers can be more of a deterrent than something that um, can increase performance, with a few exceptions. So with regard to high school athlete, in a general sense, um, your talent and your ability to compete usually separates you from the other people. Some people are more talented than others, and they may get to the college level, and then there'll be a few that get from college to the pros, um, and that's based on talent, mental skills, physical attributes, that type of stuff. And I don't see how analytical sense would help them in any way at that age.
Mm.
Now, perhaps starting in college and in, I think most recently the Astros probably are a good example of how analytics, their pitchers throw a lot of breaking balls. They have a high spin rate. They throw a lot of breaking balls, which resulted in a lot of strikeouts. And it's probably changed a lot of pitchers' success levels because of that. Um, Other pitchers may change their sequence of their pitches because they get so much spin on their fastball and then this much spin. So there are, within the, I think, the elite level, there are probably chances for that to make a greater impact than at the youth or high school level. But when I say elite, I'm talking, probably, those college athletes that are draftable for the next level, and then players at the next level.
From your playing and coaching experience, are players at the highest levels primarily driven and motivated by inspiration or desperation? So kind of, are they kind of motivated by more intrinsic factors, or do you think more extrinsic factors?
I think it's both. I think that, for me, it was intrinsic. I loved the game, wanted to do what I was doing, but you get to the major leagues and you start to make some money and you realize that there's definitely a extrinsic motivation for this too. And I think that, but I do think what's most important is to have the intrinsic motivation, love of the sport, being able to do it for your own mastery and gratification, um, is the best route. If you start with extrinsic motivation, um, we talked about those challenges early in those obstacles. If you're going for external motivation and you face a challenge, where do you go to get your strength to get through it?
Right.
So I think that intrinsic definitely is that most athletes would be there first.
Say a player loves the game, but he reaches the major leagues and he starts getting lots of pressure from the coaches to perform. And if you don't perform like it happened to you in the book, you're going back to AAA. How does one kind of switch from being motivated by all those extrinsic factors to back into intrinsic when you have all those pressures on you at that same time?
Yeah, I mean that's what the life of a pro athlete is like. Um, it's a very precarious occupation. And you could be an injury away or a couple of bad performances away, and you find yourself on the outside looking in again. Um, and that I think that's just resilience. It's players, elite players with intrinsic motivation, um, that face a setback, understand that what they can control is what they do. They can't control what the team does or what other players do or what moves people make. And for example, I remember when I got sent down to AAA one year with the Yankees, and I was so bitter that the major league team had sent me down and someone took my spot, and when am I going to get back and how is it going to happen? That for 2 weeks I was miserable. I pitched poorly. I was miserable. And it wasn't until I started to think about me, like, what do I need to do to get back to pitching well? What do I need to do to improve my game? Um, that all those other things went away, and in the greater picture, the situation took care of itself because shortly after that, I was back in the big leagues. But if I'd have focused on all those outside things, you lose focus of what you're doing. And it was important for me to get back to understanding what I needed to do. And I think that's where most athletes would say, okay, this happened. What can I control? You can control you, and to focus on what you need to do to get back to that position.
Last final questions I have are inspired by Michael Gervais' podcast. I don't know if you've seen his
I've
stuff.
heard it a couple times. Yeah.
So at the end, what he does, he just has some final rapid fire questions, and just to see kind of the initial impression or initial response that you have. Just quick responses.
Okay.
So the
Let's
first
do it.
one, how do you articulate mastery?
Excellence.
Personal philosophy or phrase that guides your life?
Just for today.
Success is?
Being happy.
Next one is happiness is?
Happiness is content.
Pressure comes from?
Yourself.
It all comes down to?
Thoughts become things.
Love that. That's part of the book. Awesome. I'll end with, where can listeners find your work? And do you have any final words for the viewers?
Well, I think, first of all, I think you're outstanding at what you do, and you're going to find success in this field in some capacity. There's no doubt about that.
Thank you.
From my end. Number one. Number two, I think that, like I said earlier, these are life skills, and they're applicable in many different ways, and they're not unique to sport. And you can find me at my website, bobtewksbury.com. I'm working with some private clients. I'd be open for anyone interested in my services can reach me there, or email me at coaching@bobtewksbury.com, and we'll connect.